We'll now go to Mr. Garrett from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's like I live in a parallel universe sometimes when I'm in this town. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who I hold in high regard, once suggested that you're entitled to your own opinions but not entitled to your own facts. And Vandenberg famously said that politics should stop at the water's edge, but when I listened to my esteemed colleague make his introductory remarks where he said, quote, he's not clear on the administration's plans to deal with ISIS and how it differs from the last administration if it does, I thought, well, where am I? So I'm going to use such hardline conservative sources as the Huffington Post, CNN, and the Atlantic to try to address his concerns and inability to differentiate. On June 8th of this year, CNN said Iran calls Trump's ISIS response repugnant. I don't think the Iranians criticized the last administration so vociferously. On June 29th, Huffington Post said U.S.-supported forces retake Mosul. The Atlantic on May 20th said the scramble for a post-ISIS Syria is beginning. And ABC News on July 20th said, or quoted a former three-star general who said, it's simple, we're winning, they're losing. Let's contrast that to the previous administration. ABC News, June 29, 2016 said, ISIS 2 years later, from JV team to international killers. November 14, 2015, CNN said, Obama declares ISIS contained the day before the Paris attacks. Newsweek, April 19, 2016 said, Obama, Mosul will be recaptured from ISIS by the end of this year. We know how that turned out. And the New Yorker, January 10, 2017 said, quote, during President Obama's 8 years in office, jihadis gained more turf, more followers, and more money. So I wish that my colleague who said he couldn't differentiate between the policies of the previous administration and this one had looked not at policies but at results, because I think they're relatively easily differentiated. Sorry, I couldn't help myself there. We've talked early in this hearing about repealing the AUMF and then replacing it. I will submit, and again, I apologize, I have limited time, that is incredibly dangerous in my estimation, because historically what I think we've learned is that the Article 2 branch will exercise executive authority without authorization where they deem it necessary, and candidly, I think constitutionally they almost have a duty to do that. And historically, I think it's telling what Andrew Jackson said after the court ruled. They've made their ruling, now let's see them enforce it. So we have a duty here. I would adopt the comments of my colleague from the other side of the aisle, Congressman Deutsch, not doing a new AUMF as an abdication of our responsibility and our duties. And candidly, unfortunately, it seems that we abdicate more frequently sometimes in this body than we act. But I think it is our responsibility to review the circumstances in light of obvious changes over the course of 16 years, and then act appropriately to authorize and fund, because that's our Article 1 responsibility, our government as it pursues the enemies of this nation and ensures, hopefully, peace and stability, and thus prosperity and opportunity for our posterity. I'd also, however, reference positively the comments of my colleague, Mr. Kinzinger, who said, and I'll paraphrase, that we're at war not with the nation but an idea, and that we need to focus on that 7-year-old displaced child in a camp somewhere, because you can't declare victory against an idea and have it be a fait accompli. You have to create circumstances where individuals have hope, have a pathway to opportunity, because it's been my observation that you're much less likely to strap an explosive vest to yourself when you aspire one day to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. So we need to look to the future, but we also need to aggressively prosecute those who would do us harm. My fear is this, that we have all too often in the past looked at what the needs of the moment were and not looked to the long-term needs. We articulated early upon being sworn into office that we should never engage in regime change without contemplating just what might fill the vacuum. And so specifically as it relates to Syria, and again, I want to advocate very clearly that we should enact a new AUMF, that we should not repeal the existing AUMF until the day after the old one goes into effect, because creating a vacuum means something will fill it. But specifically as it relates to Syria, everyone knows the horrific acts of Assad, but are there, and maybe I'm a little bit afield, Mr. Chairman, are there any viable entities to run that nation as it currently exists on a map who wouldn't be equal to or worse than Syria? Jabhat al-Nusra and Jabhat al-Fatah al-Sham are essentially co-opted by al-Qaeda, right? And then there's ISIS, You've got the Kurds who have no desire to run that country and the country who has no desire to be ruled by Kurds. So open-endedly, as we authorize an AUMF and we act in Syria, don't we need to be careful that we don't create a circumstance where what follows is worse than, if conceivable, than what we have now? I'll yield back, but that one can be rhetorical, but
Thank you, sir.
I think I know the answer.
Appreciate your comments.